The Vice Chancellor of Canterbury University, Dr. Rod Carr, is with me. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
Carr. Thank you for coming in.
Nice to be here.
You've heard our report. Do you accept that the university is in some degree of trouble here?
I think the first thing to remember is, even in your report, there is a recognition that this is a world-class university with a prestigious law school that is currently teaching 13,000 students across 70 different programs, offering 1,200 courses of study. The university and its students are of a significant scale and of a great reputation. As a result of the earthquake, it is the case that we have had to change the way we are organised and the way we are doing things. It's also important to recognise that while the government has held the student achievement component of our funding at pre-quake levels, actually our tuition income, that's the fees the students pay, and those are domestic and international students, has fallen by nearly $19 million a year. We have not been compensated for that.
Let's look then at your law school, because it has an enviable reputation and it's very much has its own identity. Why then align it with the School of Commerce?
Well, I think that the discussion about that alignment started 7 years ago at the university, when the 39 schools and departments were gathered together to create 4 colleges. The School of Law at that time stood aside from that process, and it was always understood that there would be a subsequent review. Now, over the time that passed, the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Law's position was used for other roles, international and other things. The Dean and Head of the School of Law reported to me, except for administrative matters. The Dean was talking day to day with the Pro-Vice Chancellor of one of the other colleges. So at the end of last year, we simply said, let's confirm the arrangement where the Head of the School of Law, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Law, which remain independent, would simply report to another senior manager.
Okay, let's look at the student role. We raised this in our report too, because it's down significantly. 1,800 fewer domestic students, 400 fewer foreign students. At the same time, you've cut staff. Now, Canterbury is a university where many students go for the superior reputation, if you like, and that level of teachers. Why cut now?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is we have 1,850 continuing staff at the university, of which in our academic staffing in the year after the earthquake we had 1 compulsory redundancy, and this year we have 18 academic staff who have had their roles disestablished. That's 1% of our staffing. This is unfortunate, but I think it can be overly dramatised.
At the same time, yes, well, we did hear some students in that report saying that they had been advised by some teachers, by some tutors, to look elsewhere, perhaps to look to Auckland. Does that trouble you?
It troubles me that some of our own staff may not understand, and that is a communications issue. I need to accept responsibility. That in doing that, they are likely to cause more anxiety, stress and loss than is warranted by the circumstances we're in.
Let's just look at some of the financial issues that we did raise in that report. You know, your 10-year forecast shows you're losing $100,000 every business day. Insurance bill rocketed by 600%, was $1 million, now $7 million. How can you sustain that with a falling student roll and, in essence, no increase in the level of government funding?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that the university itself is a large business, and these things need to be put into their right context. We started the earthquake with about $100 million of cash and reserves, and we are well insured. So far we have already drawn down about $100 million of our insurance claim and spent it remediating the campus. So we will, by the end of February, have remediated nearly 40,000 square metres of space and have already built 15,000 square metres of new space. Some of the new spaces actually are superior to the spaces which we had before.
But you still have that falling student roll though, don't you?
No, the roll largely fell between 2010 and 2011. It has stabilised at a lower level. That is very different from a continuing decline in the roll. In fact, applications to our halls of residence for next year are up 30% on same time last year.
Okay, sure, but what's your plan then? Because how are you going to make ends meet? You can't make ends meet in this current scenario, can you?
Well, we have the plan, which is to recover our student numbers, and we'll do that both by attracting talented students with scholarships, by making sure that the true state and range of courses and opportunities are available. We have new courses starting.
Post-earthquakes, with respect to Dr. Carr, because international students probably aren't going to necessarily come into Christchurch in numbers, are they? It's just not somewhere that they necessarily feel safe at the moment.
Well, I think it's one of those things that first we have to make sure that actually the facts are known, that the city of Christchurch is safe and the university's buildings are the most thoroughly inspected buildings of any campus, I imagine. That in addition, we've currently establishing an affiliated college with Navitas, who recruit over 10,000 international students into 26 affiliated universities around the world.
Sure.
And we will continue to promote the wider opportunities at the University of Canterbury with new courses and programs of study.
Have you approached the government and have you said to the Minister, these are the issues we have, this is the shortfall we have, that we can't maintain Canterbury in the standing it once was in this current climate?
We have indeed made a case to the government, and that's a case that the Minister and his advisors needs time to consider. And as indicated in your clip, they have a timetable for considering that case, and that's well in advance of when the university is likely to face significant stress.
Some criticism in that report saying if you had the backing of the Minister, you wouldn't be having to make these cuts that you're making, and perhaps, you know, potentially the wrong cuts here, merging, for example, the Law Library with the Central Library. That's a degree of opposition to that.
I think on the Law Library issue, we have to be clear. The entire law building has to be emptied. It has to be gutted from floor to ceiling, from wall to wall.
Once all that's
everything
done,
has to come out of it.
Will that Law Library go back to being on its own again? Because that's a key issue that students have been protesting about.
The law students will still have a dedicated library, and it will be in a building built for the purposes of housing the library. Faculty offices will need to be provided in the law building for the commerce faculty.
Sure. We've seen what Heke Parata has tried to do with some of the schools in Christchurch. Could we see potentially Canterbury, Lincoln, potentially the Christchurch Polytech working a little closer?
Well, I think the working closer is a sensible thing, and we've certainly spent quite a lot of time making sure that we don't duplicate unnecessarily things that we do, that we provide clear pathways for students who are one institution so they can migrate to another. And in the case of Lincoln, we have things like our Waterways Research Centre, which has joint appointments of staff and students from both institutions studying together. So certainly we need to do as much of that as we can.
We're not talking about mergers here?
No.
Not on the table?
Not on the table.
Do you feel that you have the complete backing of the Minister here? Has Stephen Joyce got your back, do you think?
I believe the Minister is willing to consider our case along with all the other claims and demands that are in front of the government today.
All right, Rod Carr, Vice Chancellor of the University of Canterbury. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.